Bossmonster.
In many ways, the Flash game scene was the mobile game scene of its day. You have some cool games enjoyed by millions of people, but you also have a ton of clones of previously established games. You also have really cheap, terrible games made by shady, disposable companies. Some of those cheap games were also a little messed up in concept. Obviously, violence in video games, while constantly fear-mongered and debated over, is normal. Shooter games are popular, and often the edginess of them adds to their appeal. But just like any other edgy feature, while it can be used to make something interesting or cool or badass, it could also kind of fail? Sometimes what seemed edgy to little kids 25 years ago is almost quaint by modern standards. You recognize that the things happening in the game are messed up in concept, but the execution of the games themselves makes it come off as too goofy to take seriously, especially these days. One short-lived Flash game developer that I personally have a lot of memories of that fits perfectly into this mold is Bossmonster. I'm not gonna lie, this company is so nearly erased from existence that I could find nothing about it. Even the name now is associated with some dungeon card game company that has nothing to do with the original. While I have no idea where Bossmonster is from or when they went defunct, the 5 games that can still be found by them were released between 2001 and 2002. As I alluded to earlier, the topics of most of their games were oddly cruel or weird in concept, but the games were so cheap looking or bad that it waters it down. Their first game, called Soccer Thugs, is simply about 2 soccer or football hooligans fighting each other like a fighter game. Pretty normal and basic, although it is somewhat amusing that your character's fighting moves are surprisingly advanced for a potentially drunk hooligan. Bossmonster's next 3 games, however, are where things get interesting. One popular PC game of the 90s was 1999's Roller Coaster Tycoon, a game where you try to design roller coasters to run a theme park. However, they were not the first. In 1994, a game called Theme Park was released on MS-DOS with the same concept. While it was critically acclaimed, Roller Coaster Tycoon did seem to overshadow it. And to be fair, there's a reason for that. It had much more of a story and way more interesting gameplay. It was kind of deserved. But that didn't stop Theme Park from attempting to compete with various sequel games. One of them was released in 2001 called Theme Park Inc. and boy, it doesn't exactly look very enticing, does it? Yeah, no, this is an ugly looking game. Well, the theme park games, when expanding to the American market, had to use a different name of Sim Coaster, and they made a whole Sim Coaster website that would feature a couple of online games. These online games would have the same aesthetic as Theme Park Inc., but of course even simpler. And they hired Bossmonster to develop some of the games for the website. So sometime in 2001, 3 Bossmonster games were released: Sim Coaster Roller Coaster Roundup, Sim Coaster Bumper Boat Bonanza, and Sim Coaster Penguin Arcade. Now you'd imagine that since Sim Coaster is in the name of these games, they'd have something to do with roller coasters or theme parks, right? Kind of, maybe? Sim Coaster Roller Coaster Roundup is a game about entrapping children inside the theme park. Yeah, you heard me correctly. Basically, children are trying to leave the theme park, but oh no, they haven't tried one of the roller coasters in the park. So you're playing as a security guard where you walk up to the children and drag them to the roller coaster. Every child you fail to apprehend causes the happiness bar to go down, and once you're too sad, you lose. Okay, where do I begin? You're forcibly keeping children prisoner in the theme park, and as a security guard no less, so you're not even like an employee who would encourage people to go on rides. But as messed up of a concept as this is, the graphics are so ugly and the gameplay is so basic you just kind of go, eh? But okay, let's see the next game. Sim Coaster Bumper Boat Bonanza is a game where you're a kid in a pool floaty who jousts other kids in a pool floaty, and you fight as many kids as you can until your health bar goes down. Okay, simple enough. It's a fighting game but more friendly. I'm not sure what this has to do with roller coasters though. I guess there are theme parks with water rides, so you can kind of fit it with theme parks in general, but I don't know, I guess I'm overthinking a Flash game here. The third game though is something else. Sim Coaster Penguin Arcade is a game that I guess is like a carnival game but with some animal cruelty involved. Basically, there's a block of ice surrounded by some water. Penguins will hop onto the block of ice and run around for a bit before jumping back into the water. You meanwhile control an ice cube gun where you shoot the penguins off the ice block. If they jump off without having been shot, your happiness bar goes down. Okay, so this is a game where if you don't get to enjoy some sociopathic animal abuse, you lose. I gotta give it to you, that's a messed up concept. But of course the game is so basic and ugly and tame that it comes off more as Looney Tunes style violence than anything serious. The penguins even make funny noises when you hit them. And just to be clear, I don't think you're a psycho if you play these games by any means. I played them as a kid, and many others did. But it is a genuinely amusing and interesting concept about how sometimes media can make the most screwed up concepts into technically harmless fun. While this kind of has the format of a carnival game, I'm 99% sure it's actually just in Antarctica because every once in a while puffin birds fly by, so clearly it's not an enclosure. So considering this a theme park related thing seems like a stretch. This game in particular was also on Miniclip and therefore the most popular of the three. After these games, the only other Bossmonster appears to have made is a 2002 Flash game called Ant City on Fire. You know the old-fashioned trope of awful kids holding up a magnifying glass under the sun to use it as a sort of laser against an anthill? Now imagine that, but it's a giant with a human city, or at least a city block. Yeah, you're lighting random people on fire with a giant magnifying glass. You can also use it on cars and maybe cause them to crash into other people. You can also light dogs on fire too, which feels a lot more messed up than shooting ice cubes at penguins. I even remember, as a kid when I played this game, I would actively avoid hurting the dogs, but of course I was perfectly fine with hurting everyone else. The only way you lose the game is if you use the magnifying glass on a gas tanker, which blows up the entire city block and ends your fun for good. After that, Bossmonster appears to have disappeared. The URL of their former website now takes you to a random dude's website. No idea if he maybe used to work for Bossmonster or something, or if he's related to the Monster Dungeon card game thing. In any case, companies like these were a dime a dozen, and now they're pretty much totally forgotten. But I am sure someone else somewhere remembers playing one of these games at least. Thanks for watching.